Hello, Year 13. I've put together one of my classic rants about paper one. I know it's probably like the fifth we've ever had, but I just want to go through all this just so it's really, really clear in your mind so we avoid any sort of silly errors or mistakes going into the paper one this week. It's no new information here at all. It's stuff that we've already gone through a million times, but it's just a refresher, just so it's clear in your mind, just so it's sat there just to help center you and make sure you know what it is you need to do and what it is you're not to do as we're going in. I wrote this down, it's quite lengthy, it ended up going on to 3 sides. So I'll share this with you as well so you have it in text format to help you revise, but I thought if I do a video, you're definitely more likely to take heart. So here we are. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the general approach, all right, and the do's and don'ts of what you should do when going into your paper one exam. So first thing you need to do is use that reading time, all right? Use that reading time to go through both the text and the guiding question. Remember that you don't have to respond explicitly to the guided question, but your answers should cover all the key aspects of that guiding question. So if it asks you about a particular thing, say layout, you have to talk about layout. You can't just ignore that altogether, okay? But you don't have to answer it as though it is like an essay question. You know that. But do make sure you cover everything in it. Obviously, then you need to select the text. Now, be careful here. Don't automatically select the text that you think that is the easiest to answer. It might be that you will get a better result from doing a more challenging text. So ask yourself the question, and some of you have been in this position before actually, where you've felt that you've been able to produce a better response with a text that you find initially more challenging. So just be aware, it should be how well do I think I can do with this, not, oh, this is the easiest, I'll go for it, all right? To this end, you need to make sure as well, when you're looking at when you pick your text, you highlight the keywords in the guiding question, all right? You should always highlight keywords in any exam anyway with big questions. And you should do so in this, just to make sure you're not going to miss anything really obvious. Remember, the guiding questions are always set up as an entry point, as a way for students to access and begin analysing the text. So do make sure you underline those keywords and make sure you don't miss anything obvious. Talking about missing obvious things, contextual information. They put it there for a reason. It could be really, really important. Remember, before we've seen paper ones being made or broken by responses, made or broken by someone not understanding or understanding the context, all right? So read that information if it's there. It could really help you access it or pick up something that's important. And again, highlight it. Don't get the text type wrong. The number of times it said this is, a blog, and someone's gone, this website, what's a website? It's a type of technology, all right? Be precise. Or they've put an article and it's not an article, all right? So just make sure that you get the text type correctly. Complete your packs and formulate 3 or 4 points. Again, you might just want to make sure you've got a 4th in reserve in case you've got time, you can do it, or you've got extra time or whatever. Some of you can do 4 points in the time, some of you stick to 3. Whatever you feel best with your practices is what you should do. If you feel you can get a 4th point in, great. If not, we need to stick to the 3. All right, so it's kind of up to you and your preferences there. Ensure that your points are thematic and consider what the text does. All right, purpose is the most important aspect of packs, and you need to be aware of multiple purposes and multiple audiences as well. All right, so just be aware that there might be a couple of purposes or maybe even a couple of different audiences that it's aimed at. So just be aware of that. We've seen texts that do that. Make sure your points are suitably distinct. They shouldn't repeat themselves, all right? If you are struggling to form thematic points, and I know some people do on certain texts, easiest way to do it, if you're panicking and you're like, I don't know what to write about, beginning, middle, end. All right, just talk about the text chronologically. Make sure you're answering that guiding question. You'll be fine. Before you start, you'll obviously need to annotate the key features of the whole text. A lot of people do the first page really well. If there's a second page, they kind of miss it out, or they'll miss a really obvious thing like a massive blooming picture in there. that they just don't talk about, and you think, why on earth would you not cover that? We also need to make sure as well that we don't get caught out by humour or tone, especially things like irony or sarcasm. They can trip up students as well, so just be aware of that. We've seen that in the past where students have taken things really literally that shouldn't be literal, so just be aware of that. We need to then, once you've started annotating, just one of the questions that should be in your mind at all times when you're annotating, when you're breaking down a text in that first 15 to 20 minutes is, why is the text like this? Okay, why has this been produced in the way that it has? Where is the author coming on from when they're making these authorial choices? That's really important to consider, just a general question. You're going to need 3 to 5 pieces of evidence per paragraph. Remember, you can use short embedded quotations as well. And remember, obviously, we say evidence, we don't say quotations, okay? So it could be something to do with structure, it could be something to do with symbolism, could be something to do with colour symbolism. You can't quote a colour, all right? Just describe it, all right? Describe the facial features, describe the emotions on the face of the person that you're describing, etc. That will count as evidence, so it doesn't always have to be a quote. Planning is key. As we know, you do not want to be in a situation where you're trying to analyse something as you're writing. Get that plan done. We've practiced that 1,000 times. You should know how to do effective planning. You've got 15 minutes. If it gets to 20, you must start writing. So keep an eye on that time. I'm sure you're getting very good at time management. So yeah, your first 15-20 minutes is kind of your make or break time really when you're doing that analysis. So that's when you need to be your most alert, most sharp, and most focused. Once you've got that plan and you've checked that each of the points answers the guiding question, you've covered everything, you think they're good responses, you've got good evidence, you feel comfortable in analysing it, then you can relax a bit and just concentrate on the quality of your writing. It's that first 15-20 minutes that's going to be really intense. If you have extra time, those of you that do, make sure you use every single second of it. Do not be lazy. It could make a difference between your target grade above or below. So make sure you use every single second of it. So let's go through criterions, okay? So criteria A is your knowledge and understanding. So careful not to stretch your interpretations, all right? Or some people come up with some weird things. Misread what the author's trying to do or add your own ideas to what the purpose is. Read it carefully. What's on the page? What's the actual text doing, all right? Everything that you say should be able to be justified and backed up by what's on the page. Use a good range of appropriate evidence, all right? And again, make sure it's appropriate to the point that you're trying to make. Make sure that it's from a range of the text, not just in the first page or the last bit. Make sure it covers a good, broad spectrum of the text. But also as well, make sure that if there are visual elements, that you're looking at the visual elements as well. First of all, there's 3 criteria for picking evidence. Does it prove your point? If it doesn't, you can't use it. Is it of a sensible length? People picking quotes out this big and analysing 2 words. Why are you quoting it if you're not analysing it? Thirdly, is it full of features that you're comfortable analysing? If you're not, or the answer to any of those questions is no, it doesn't do those things, don't use it, pick something else that you can use. We don't want inert and pointless quotations in there. Remember, I've already said this: symbol, structure, layout, colours, all counts of evidence, so make sure you're using that as well, all right? It doesn't have to be quotes. As I've already said, if you quote it, analyse it, otherwise, why are you putting it in there? It's just a waste of space. Consider the relationship between the text and the reader. Ask yourself all the time, what is it that the author's trying to do? What are they trying to achieve? Is there an element of bias in there as well that you might want to comment on? We've looked at bias in text this year as well. One thing that people miss out on is their packs, all right? When they're doing their introduction, sometimes they'll only do P, A, and T, and they'll miss out other important elements. Of course, see packs as a checklist. I'm not saying you rigidly have to write a sentence about every single thing, but think about what's relevant to your response, okay? What's relevant to what you want to say about the text. If context is not relevant, don't put it in, but if it is and helps you understand it, then put it in, of course. Let's look at criteria B, which is your analysis of the authorial choices and stylistic devices that are employed in there. Close analysis, in other words. Always correctly identify techniques. You will need to revise those if you're a little bit wonky on some of them. All right, I've given you a checklist there. Make sure you look at structure as well. Structure is something that often gets left out. It could be the layout of the whole thing. It could be paragraphs and how paragraphs are. It could be the order of the ideas. Does this, and then it moves on to something else. It could be the paragraph length. It could be the sentence length. All right, so do consider structure and structural features. People often sort of forget about those and concentrate on words and techniques. Talking about that, obviously consider the impact of keywords and their connotations, semantic fields, and the effect on the reader. Apart from your general analysis, your inference, what something means, you've got to comment on specific things, specific techniques, specific structural choices, specific language choices. So, for example, why does the author use a particular metaphor to compare X and Y? What is the impact of that metaphor? You need to unpick that. So you need to have the broad inference, the sort of general commentary, and then some close commentary on specific techniques. Always comment about the desired effect on the intended audience. That needs to be in every single paragraph, all right? It needs to be in there. You need to be talking about what this text is doing for the people it's designed to reach. Consider the author's intention. What is it they're trying to communicate? What is it their message? What they're trying to get across? Also, I've said this many times, we need to be showing off the breadth of analysis, that we can look at lots of different elements in the text, not just 2 quotations per paragraph. It's not enough. We need to say that we're continually looking at the text, but also we want to show off that layered analysis. So we've got breadth and depth, okay? We want to make sure that we're looking at layered, multiple interpretations. So this quote shows this, but it also shows this, and it also develops this. Now, when you get really good at this, and really good responses show that layering as well as breadth. Now, you can't do that for every single quote because you haven't got the time, but maybe once in each paragraph, give me a little bit of layering to show the examiner, hey, look, I can do detailed analysis and I can look at breadth as well. All right, so you're showing off the diversity of your analytical skills. Balance is key. Let's move on to criteria C, which is your organization of your response and your focus. Ensure that you clearly separated your paragraphs. Sometimes it is difficult to see where your paragraphs are. It needs to be clearly delineated. Never, ever, ever start a new line within a paragraph. You can use separate lines between paragraphs, but each paragraph should be a discrete block. Most people are okay with that now, but it's just a reminder, don't go off and do something silly like forget your paragraph in. It will have a negative effect. Ensure your point is clearly and precisely expressed. Your point is your foundation for your analytical paragraph. If your point is woolly and you're not quite really saying anything, all of your analysis will be woolly and it won't be tied to anything because you're not sure what you're trying to say. Your point should be cast iron. What is it I'm trying to say? This is what I want to say about the text. Okay? So spend time on that point is really, really crucial. Never make your points about a particular technique, like it uses similes. I've said this millions of times in class. It needs to be about what the text does. And then you prove that by looking at different techniques, okay, such as similes. If you're talking about the impact of imagery, talk about what that imagery does generally, and then give me different examples, okay? And don't just say the text uses imagery, all right? That's a very weak point. In order for structure to be good as well, we need to start trying to make links. So signposting. So things like moreover, in addition, consequently, those little things, those little just connectives, we call them discourse markers, but what they do is they just help to link your ideas. So as you're reading it, it's really clear where your argument's going, all right? Think about the order in which you're looking at something. Kids do weird things, like they'll pick a quote and the quote is like the last thing in the article or the letter or whatever it is. And you're thinking, why have you started right at the very end? It's counterintuitive, so it's not logical. So just make sure there's a nice, clear, logical structure, and make sure that your ideas are sequenced. We call that signposting. So when you're introducing a quote as well, another thing that kids do a lot is they'll just make a point and then bang, there's a quote, and then they'll analyze it and then bang, there's another quote, and you're thinking, my goodness, why? I don't understand the relevance of this quote. Just use a little short introductory phrase. It could be like this sense of pity is developed in the description of X or Y, and then put the quote in. It just helps to make it clear, that's what the student's saying. They understand the use of this, and it's easy to follow your argument. And again, try and make some links between your paragraphs where possible, all right? So just to have those smooth transitions between your ideas, it really helps. Also, make sure you have a conclusion. Your conclusion shouldn't just be a recap of what you've already said. It should have some development in there. And the best question you ask yourself is, from looking at my points in my analysis, what have I learned? What takes me forward? What develops here? And maybe have another look at that guiding question and see if you can say something that's more synthetic, that's drawn together those ideas and thought, actually, something's been learnt here, something new has come about. Finally, criteria D, your language, spelling, punctuation and grammar. Maintain a formal register. Do not use contractions are like okay, but don't use any slang at all, all right? Make sure you use appropriate technical language, okay? Identifying techniques correctly. Express your ideas with care and precision, no woolliness, no generalizations. You see that a lot with context as well. If something came up about rights, people say, women in this situation had no rights. It's not true. They had some rights, but maybe they were offered slightly fewer rights than men at that time or something. So not at the same rights to the same extent, or they weren't valued in the same way. Be precise with your meaning. Don't be woolly. Use a variety of sentence starters. Don't start with subject every time. Now, the something does this, the something does this, the something does this. It gets repetitive. Try to use a variety of sentence starters and sentence constructions. Use those complex sentences as well. Use a range of punctuation. Put those semicolons in there, all right, colons, dashes, brackets. Adding just a note here on your presentation, adding additional information with a 1 or a star or something like that is absolutely fine. Crossing something out is absolutely fine, but just be aware of neatness. If your page looks like an ink bomb has hit it, then it's going to look like your ideas are disorganized, or you're not prepared, or that your ideas are messy. And it shouldn't, but it can have a negative impact. So just make sure you're as neat as possible when you're actually writing your ideas, okay? If you need to, make a correction, just a smart, neat line through it, and then just carry on is absolutely fine, all right? No scribbles or arrows or stuff like that. It doesn't give a good impression to the examiner, and it might make the difference between a grade. It shouldn't, but it might. So just be aware. Final thing, edit your blooming work, all right? Those of you who are a bit weaker with spelling, punctuation, and grammar know who you are. Let's not make any silly mistakes. If you are missing things out like capital letters, punctuation, really bad, okay? Don't do that. It will definitely affect your grade for criteria D. So edit your work, give yourself a couple of minutes to go through it. That's everything, okay? I'm gonna share this link with you. As I said, this is no new information. It's information we've gone through millions of times. You've had loads of practice. I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine. Just go in there, get a good night's sleep, switch on, approach the work with a clinical eye, and just do your best. All right, and I'm sure you'll do absolutely brilliantly. All right, thank you very much. Good luck, and take care. Bye bye.